Here is Dr. Allison Siebecker. I'm Shivan Sarna. You want to just do a quick wave? Hello, Allison.
Hi. Good morning.
Good morning. Good to see you as always. Good to see you.
I'm so happy to be here.
We're so glad to be doing this and so glad that we have you, Dr. Siebecker. What an honor. What a treat. And what a chance for everybody to learn from you and to start to feel better. That is the goal, as we all know, Okay, so it's official. We're going to get started. The new semester of the SIBO Recovery Roadmap is opened, and as a result, we always like to do these sessions where we answer your questions as much as possible, but certainly give you teaching information. And then if you're interested in joining the course or not, that's fine. We'll tell you more about that. Today is about hope. With this course, with these answers, I know that you're going to be able to make a lot of progress. So let's get started. It's called Solving Stubborn SIBO Symptoms. That's a mouthful. Help for Tough Cases webinar. We're so happy, obviously, that you're here. I know you're busy, so we'll make sure we get as much information to you as possible today. Let's all get our lives back and get on with it. I'm Shivan Sarna. I founded SIBO SOS so people could learn about SIBO and what to do about it, including finding that underlying cause, what to eat, and how to work with your practitioners, and also connecting with fellow patients and experts. This is all of the information I wish I had had 5 years ago. How about even further, when I was 8, when I first probably got contracted food poisoning and got my first batch of SIBO. And I'm glad that we have Dr. Siebecker. She is my doctor. I'm very honored and thrilled to have her as my doctor and my friend. I was diagnosed in 2015. I was able to stalk Dr. Siebecker's website until she started taking patients again. And because she was doing some research at the time, and currently she's working on her book, so she's not seeing patients right now. But since then, she and I have worked on a lot of projects together in patient advocacy for people with SIBO and IBS, and it's been a pure pleasure. May all of your collaborations go as well as ours have. That is my wish for everybody in the world. I was very, very sick, and I was very, very anxious and very upset about my health. I was truly scared. I had multiple colonoscopies at me crying and begging because from my doctor, even though I didn't need one, because I didn't know better, right? Like I thought I must have cancer because I was so messed up. I was so like, this was just not right. And as a TV host with a very large career, much of it was dependent on me looking good and feeling good and, really portraying a certain aspirational image. It was very urgent for me to finally get better because it was progressing and it was getting worse. And part of that was mold exposure, making me feel much, much worse. But the fact is that SIBO hangs out with a lot of other conditions, which we'll be talking about. So I can appreciate if you're confused, if you're overwhelmed, the struggle is real. And I want you to know that there is hope. There is absolutely hope. And that is what today is all about. That is what this course is all about. That is what this session is all about. It is about hope. It is about answers. It is about action. And they are there. A lot of times when I'm, doing intros to videos or the documentary that I did about digestion, sometimes people say, like, where is the answer? They're not there. We're still seeking. Well, actually, the answers were there. They just weren't, broadcast to the world. And that's why I started SIBO SOS, to get the information out there. So I definitely feel 100% better. And that is what I want for you, which is with Dr. Siebecker's invaluable input, I have created the SIBO SOS Summit, the Digestion SOS docuseries, and of course, our amazing SIBO Recovery Roadmap course. It has helped so many people take control of their health and kick SIBO's butt, which is definitely a good feeling. Today, we have Dr. Siebecker, who will be teaching us about solutions for stubborn symptoms / tough cases. She's going to dispel a lot of myths, but also give you a lot of actionable information. I know you can relate to that, and there's no one better to help you than Dr. Siebecker. She's a SIBO patient herself. She's also a world-renowned, legitimate SIBO expert and specialist. one of the leading researchers and gastroenterology professor at NUNM, a clinician with more than 10 years experience working with every type of SIBO you can imagine. And, direct access for SIBO specialists is, well, there aren't that many, let's face it, okay? There are only a few. And Dr. Siebecker knows them all. And they often refer to her as the Queen of SIBO, which I know is like a mixed vibe, but she's...
Oh, no, I always like it, but it's like, I always say, I just want the crown.
Yeah, right. We're working on that, Dr. Siebecker. We're working on
joking.
it.
I'm joking.
I know. So it's a big get to spend this time with Dr. Siebecker, as I know a lot of you feel the same way, which is why we had thousands of people sign up for this webinar. So I'm glad you made it in. And it is my distinct pleasure and honor to spend this time with you and the one and only true health advocate, SIBO patient herself, Dr. Allison Siebecker.
Thank you, Shivan, for that lovely introduction.
Crowd goes wild.
Okay, so ready for me to start?
Yes, I am. I'm ready for you to start. And let me just do one more thing. I'm checking. All right. Yeah. Take over, Dr. Siebecker.
Okay.
Go.
Thank you so much for all of you for joining me. Really, it is really an honor for me to be able to have the opportunity to try to help others. That just makes everyone feel good when you can help others. And so I thank you for that opportunity. So my topic is solving stubborn SIBO symptoms, help for tough cases, because obviously if you're having stubborn symptoms, it's a tough situation. This is a really big topic, particularly the tough cases part. So what I've done is just chosen 3 points to speak to and highlight. And if I don't get to, the myriad of other ways we can help tough cases, we can do it in the question and answer session. How about? But three basic points. So the first one is about Prokinetics. So Prokinetics are either natural or prescription. Oh, I want to share my screen. Let me do that. Natural or prescription agents. Do you see my screen? Oh, you're muted, Shivan.
Yes, we see it.
Okay, I have a few slides I want to show you. So let me go into a nice view here for you. Okay, so these are natural or prescription agents, medicines that stimulate the migrating motor complex in the small intestine and coordinate downward movement and flow between each organ in the GI tract. So like from the stomach to the small intestine, that sort of thing, from the small intestine to the large intestine. And by the way, if you're already on one, stay tuned. If you're like, wait, I already do this, I have help for you at the end. But these agents are really key within the whole process of SIBO. And I have the algorithm up here. This is the SIBO recovery roadmap here on this slide. And you can see with the 2 black circles where we use Prokinetics in the whole sequence of events. And for those of you who are new to this roadmap or algorithm, this is a variation of an algorithm that Dr. Pimentel, who is our lead researcher in SIBO, he created back in 2006, believe it or not, all the way that long time ago. And then Dr. Sandberg Lewis and I, who began working together to help raise awareness about SIBO back in 2009 or 2010 or something like that, we created this algorithm then. And we just made a variation of it where we added in some naturopathic treatments and considerations along with what Dr. Pimentel had. And the basic flow is that you think you might have SIBO, you usually try some basic supplements or interventions that are low risk to see if you can help whatever is going wrong. But if that doesn't work, you move on to diagnosis. And so you would take a test for SIBO. And if it's positive, then you would move into some antibacterial type treatment and also some diet, usually somewhere along the line. And it's at that point, after you do a round of antibacterial treatment, so that's pharmaceutical antibiotics, elemental diet, or herbal antibiotics, that's when you would use a Prokinetic. And the idea there is to prevent you from backsliding because often people need more than one treatment round. And so between those rounds, just to hold the gains you've made. And then the next place is if you're all better, let's say the treatment worked, you're 90% or more better, you have a negative test. Now we're into the prevention phase. Prevention is a very important phase of SIBO treatment, that's also where we use a prokinetic right here, along with some other things. So the stats on using prokinetics in SIBO are really good. So basically, prokinetics prolong SIBO remission. And so what this point is about prokinetics is not having your stubborn SIBO symptoms return after you've felt better, after you've gotten somewhere here, and either not have them ever come back, or not as quickly. If you have a really tough case and you have maybe forever SIBO, you have some underlying causes that are always going to lead to SIBO. People like that in that situation, like I'm like that, Shivan's like that, so many people are like that. That doesn't mean you can't feel 90% or more better. Shivan was saying she feels 100% better. So you can have that. And the idea here is, let's get you to that point and let's make sure you don't backslide or relapse as quickly. So that's what prokinetics can do. When, in general, they can prolong remission by 2.5 or 8 extra months from what you already would have had. So that is just extraordinary. Who wouldn't want 8 additional months of lower or no symptoms, right? So in a tough case scenario, that's amazing. And then for people who were not on any kind of prokinetic, in this study, it showed when they took a prokinetic, they got an average of 5 months more additional. And then those who were already on a prokinetic, but it was a less effective one, and they switched them over to a more effective one, then their remission was extended by 3 additional months. So this is a really, really good treatment strategy for stubborn symptoms, and really helping to prolong periods of time where your symptoms are lower and extending that. And the lower effective, because this is probably what a lot of people are thinking, wait, what is the less effective prokinetic compared to the more effective prokinetic? Well, I have all the prokinetics listed for you here. And this is a slide that comes directly from the SIBO Recovery Roadmap course, where we go over prokinetics and many other aspects of ways to help with stubborn symptoms in tough cases. So let's go through them. We have, in the pharmaceutical options, we have erythromycin, prucalopride, and naltrexone. All of these are taken at low dose, these pharmaceuticals, to help stimulate the migrating motor complex. And I didn't describe what that is, actually, just in case you didn't know. If you're new to all of this, this is a type of movement or peristalsis in the small intestine itself that really its whole job is to clear bacteria down and out of the small intestine into the large intestine. And it prevents overgrowth. It prevents bacterial accumulation. We have other protections that help us with this in the small intestine, because we don't normally have too many, an overgrowth of bacteria in the small intestine. But the migrating motor complex is the number one. It's key. And it's really the number one physiologic underlying cause for SIBO is it's not working properly, and bacteria can then overgrow and accumulate. So this is what they all do. So at low dose, so for instance, the first one here, erythromycin, you may be familiar with as an antibiotic, but in low dose, it actually works differently. It works as a prokinetic and not as an antibiotic. So very important, you have the doses here. Down underneath that, we have the natural or herbal prokinetics. We have Iberogast, which is a liquid herbal combination available on Amazon and at various other places. Have the ingredients listed for you. And then next is a category that I now call ginger-containing prokinetics. And back when I first created this course, Modal Pro was the only one around. Now I've since updated the slides to show the other ones that are now available in the market. And those also include Motility Activator, GI Motility Complex. Those two have the same patented ginger artichoke product, but the GI Motility Complex additionally has some apple cider vinegar in it, which is wonderful for digestion. We have Prokine and SIBO MMC, and in the UK only, bio.me.kinetic. And I actually brought some Prokinetic things, boxes and products I can show you. So the prucalopride at the top is sold as Resitran or Resilor outside of the US, and that looks like this. In the US, it's now available, and it's sold as, oh, what is it called, Shivan? I can't remember. It's new.
Motegrity.
Oh yeah, Motegrity. I'm like, why isn't that coming to my brain? Here's what Iberogast looks like. It's liquid and like this. Sometimes it looks a little different. I have Prokine here. That's what that one looks like. And then this is what bio.me.kinetic looks like for a UK audience. So these are various Prokinetics. Now, oh, pardon me. That was my Iberogast falling over. At the bottom of the slide, we see just ginger root itself. So ginger root at this particular dose, 1,000 milligrams, is a prokinetic, and it's a very good one, particularly to help the stomach and the small intestine.
Ooh, I'm sorry, Dr. Siebecker, I need to interrupt. Somebody's saying that they couldn't see the bottles because they could only see the screen of your sharing screen.
Oh yeah, let me stop sharing and I'll show you again.
Just do that one more time. Thank you.
Oh yeah, thanks for letting me know. So here's what prucalopride resitran looks like. And then this is Iberogast. Here's Prokine. And then bio.me.kinetic for the UK audience. Okay, so back to screen share. Let me just get the right thing on here. Okay, so at the bottom you see the ginger root. So all those supplemental ones that are these combination formulas in the middle there, the ginger containing prokinetics, they all have ginger root, obviously, right? But they also have things like 5-HTP and other ingredients, and they differ a little bit from each other. And they're all good. I find them all equally good. It really doesn't matter which one you choose, which I know can be confounding. It's like, tell me which one. I don't know, whichever one pops up, whichever one's easiest to get, fastest to get, cheapest, doesn't matter. They all work really well. So these are our prokinetics, and notice at the top I have the dose. They're all taken at night before bed because this stimulates the migrating motor complex. The migrating motor complex works when we're fasting, when we're not eating. And so when we're sleeping, we're not eating unless we're sleep eating, but most people don't have that problem. So that's the time to take them. It stimulates that overnight, clears out the bacteria. So here you go. Now I talk lots and lots more about this in the course, but there's really one other key thing I want to go over. By the way, let me just look here. No, I can hold that thought. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to mention is that prokinetics are not laxatives, and laxatives are not prokinetics. So I've listed names of prokinetics on the left and names of laxatives on the right. Let me go through them. So at first we have 3 prokinetics that I haven't mentioned, and they're in italics, and they have safety concerns. They're not all very safe, and so I don't recommend them for use in SIBO. Some people are using them, like particularly from other countries. Domperidone is used often, and actually that one I feel okay about the safety of, but in general, I don't talk to these, I don't teach to these because we have a lot of other options. Then we have erythromycin, prucalopride, I just mentioned those. Now, Tagacerod is what the original study that Dr. Pimentel did, that I was just showing you, was using. And this is where I can explain what the less effective prokinetic versus the more effective prokinetic was in his study. He compared erythromycin to Tagacerod. And erythromycin is very effective, but Tagacerod was much more effective. Problem is, it then was removed from the US market for safety concerns.
Well, it's the slide, Dr. Siebecker. Apologies.
Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I forgot to move it. Oh, thank you for telling me. Okay, so Tagacerod was removed from the market, but it's just come back. It came back about a year ago, I think. So it's back on the market. It was sold and is sold as Zelnorm in the US. Now, prucalopride is even more effective than Tagacerod. So even though Tagacerod's back, we all prefer prucalopride because it's safer, much, much safer. It actually has no safety concerns. and even more effective. So there we have those. And then we have iberogast that I mentioned in ginger. Now on this grouping of prokinetics, I did not list naltrexone, low dose naltrexone, or LDN for short. And that is because it is technically not a prokinetic. It has prokinetic activity. It's been studied and proven to have prokinetic activity. But since it's not actually listed in the category of prokinetics, I didn't put it here. Now over on the right, we have laxatives. So there's three categories generally for laxatives: osmotic, secretagogue, and stimulant. Osmotic laxatives are things like polyethylene glycol, sold as Miralax in the US, or high-dose magnesium or vitamin C. Secretagogues are pharmaceutical prescription medicines like Amitiza, Trulance, and Linzess. And then the stimulant laxatives are herbal remedies like Senna or Cascara Sagrada, or aloe. And then we have bisacodyl. So these are not the same thing. And a couple of points on this. Most people taking a prokinetic won't really feel anything. The way that they're going to know that the prokinetic is working or doing its job is if they don't relapse or backslide as quickly, which can be sort of frustrating. It's not, it's not something you can tell immediately when you take it. You have to understand what you're using it for and be committed to that and then use it. Now, prokinetics can be used with diarrhea patients. Very important point, because they're not laxatives. Any medicine, any supplement we give has the potential to cause diarrhea. If you look at the side effects listed for any medicine, it will say diarrhea, upset stomach, etc. So if by chance a prokinetic did worsen bowel movements for you, just like any medicine could have the opportunity to, then you have two choices. You can either lower the dose or stop it and switch to a different prokinetic. If you are lowering the dose to try that, my recommendation would be stop the prokinetic and wait till whatever diarrhea or excessive bowel movement abates, stops, and then try the lower dose, because you just want that clear so you can see the reaction. And basically, don't just assume, if you have a bad reaction to a prokinetic or even two prokinetics, don't assume that all prokinetics will do that to you, because I see this all the time with patients. I see a lot of sensitive patients, and we try something, it doesn't work, we try something else, it doesn't work, and then we find something that works, like meaning that they don't have a reaction. So don't give up. Don't give up quickly or easily. This is a very important category to include in SIBO treatment. And then lastly, very important to know that laxatives don't stimulate the migrating motor complex. So they will not give you the remission benefit of a prokinetic. What I was just mentioning, 8 extra months, laxatives won't do that. And so this is very important to understand, because unfortunately, many practitioners don't understand this. And they'll say, well, you're on Linzess, so that's fine, that's a prokinetic. It is not a prokinetic. And I'm so sorry if that has happened to you with your practitioner and that they don't understand the difference. Linzess will not stimulate the migrating motor complex. So that's what we're after physiologically. Okay, so the one last point on this is basically how to stop taking them. You can stop them at any time. The amount of length I would suggest taking them at first is a minimum of 3 months. And that's because the average time that people relapse after they're feeling better from treatment is about 2.5 months. And so if you go to 3 months, it gets you past that window, and then you could remove it. The way that I suggest going off of it is to slowly titrate your dose down so that you can catch a relapse if it begins to happen. You have to pay attention. Just know that this is what you're doing, that you're bringing your dose down slowly. Watch for symptoms. If they start happening, bring the dose back up, and that usually takes care of it. But if you don't have any symptoms come, you just keep titrating down, and then you're off. And that happens for a lot of people. They don't need it anymore. On the other hand, there are people with really tough cases, incurable underlying causes of SIBO that are always going to have SIBO return for them. And those people often stay on prokinetics long-term, like basically forever, so to speak. We'll have to see, do they really need it forever? Can we get them off maybe after 5 years, maybe after 10 years? But it's okay to take them long-term. The only problem with that is that sometimes we become tolerant to it, meaning it stops working. And in that case, you take a break from it, usually at least a minimum of 2 weeks. You could use a different Prokinetic in that time, and then you can go back to it, and often the effect will be refreshed. And last point, I keep saying I'm on my last point, but this is my last point on Prokinetics, is if you were already on one and you're like, well, I've already tried this and I still have a tough case, I still have stubborn symptoms, it's not helping me. Remember, you can switch to a different one. Let's say you're already on our most effective one, which is prucalopride. You can actually add another one. So for instance, you could add erythromycin in the morning when you first wake up, and then prucalopride you take at night. You could do this with any of them. You could take, Iberogast first thing in the morning, ginger at night, that kind of thing. So you can mix and match these together. And I have most of my really stubborn symptom, tough case patients on 2 Prokinetics. So that's it on this point. Shivan, anything you wanted to add or ask before I move to my next point?
Thank you so much. Is ginger, the root we can buy at the grocery store, is that if we add it to our food or make a little ginger lemon tea with the root, is that enough for most people, Dr. Siebecker, to cause a prokinetic reaction?
Well, I think in small doses, it does still have that effect, because this is what we see with nausea and ginger. So people could have a cup of ginger tea or a ginger candy chew, and it will make their nausea go away. And we believe some of that is due to the prokinetic effect of moving stomach contents down. That could even include acid that might be in the stomach, that sort of thing, whatever's there moving down. However, for the purposes of really stimulating the migrating motor complex, I would stick with the dose listed here. If you're using it, which is 1,000 milligrams, I'll go back, of the root capsule. If you're using one of the ginger combination formulas, it will be in a smaller amount, but that's okay because there's other ingredients in there that are also working. Of course, a person could always try, maybe a cup of ginger tea at night is going to work for you. I just don't have data on it, but you're always welcome to try that.
Okay. And then I think that pretty much covers it. You talked about titrating off. The other question that's been very consistent is, while you're doing SIBO treatment,
oh yeah,
can you be on a Prokinetic? Just
right
about the timing.
Yes, absolutely you can. So you can take Prokinetics during your next treatment round. So the issue here is really more, I think, about the concern about money, in that you don't need to be on a Prokinetic when you're doing antibacterial treatment. So you can stop it, and then you can just return to it right when your antibacterial treatment is over. The exception would be low-dose naltrexone, LDN, because we typically titrate that medicine slowly up over a week or two. And so you don't want to stop it and then have to titrate back up again. So that one I would recommend just staying on. Now, if you're not worried about money and you're like, why don't I just stay on it? That is absolutely fine. In fact, even though I said that Prokinetics, you may not feel it, they actually can help symptoms. They actually can. And I use them that way a lot. I go over that in the Recovery Roadmap course. I'm not going to speak to all of that today, but people may feel better on them and not want to stop taking them. And so you absolutely can keep taking them. One other exception would be when you're doing elemental diet. I don't typically recommend any herbal supplements at that time, because they contain complex carbohydrates or polysaccharides, which is in opposition to what we're trying to do with the elemental diet. Now, one could make the argument, well, if it's just like 2 capsules of something, it's so small, does it really matter? Like, for instance, ginger root. And maybe it doesn't. But my general recommendation is not to take herbal supplements during elemental diet.
And this also has to do with the timing. Like, can you take probiotics when you're doing the Prokinetics? What if I have to take other medicines at night when I'm doing the Prokinetics?
Yeah, you can take, in fact, I think it's fantastic to take probiotics with Prokinetics, because then it would move them a little bit faster, potentially through the small intestine, which is a concern many people have, is won't it just accumulate in my small intestine? And so I think it's wonderful to take them together. And And if you're taking other medicines at night, that's also fine. I mean, we do it all the time. And you don't really have to space it out. There's only one medicine that I would say don't take it with, and that is charcoal or any other type of binder, as it's called. You always take binders or charcoal away from all other medicines because they absorb them. They can absorb that medicine.
I also just wanted to say, if you've missed anything, we will be sending a replay out. So if you missed a slide or the spelling of something, don't worry, we will be sending out a replay. Okay, Dr. Siebecker, carry on. Thank you very, very much.
Okay, great. All right, so my next point is actually, if you're having stubborn symptoms, how about we just give you some symptomatic relief? So there are 3 layers of SIBO treatment in my mind. Just to broadly classify it when we come at treating SIBO. And symptoms is really the top layer. And I think the key thing I'd want everyone to know is that taking treatments for symptoms or aiming some treatments at symptoms is not only okay and fine, it's a good idea. Because you need to make yourself feel comfortable, basically. So the second layer is the bacteria itself, the actual overgrown bacteria. And the underneath layer would be the underlying cause. So all of these, targets for treatment are valid and important. None really even more important than the other. We really need to look at all of them. And the issue with doing some treatments for stubborn symptoms is particularly because we're two real cases here. One is that a lot of our antibacterial treatments may not work really quickly. In some lucky people, very fortunate people, they do, and they feel better in a couple days. But for most people, it's not overnight. And this is because either their gas is very high, they have a lot of bacterial overgrowth, and it's going to take multiple rounds. Maybe it's by the second round or third round that now they're feeling symptomatic relief. Or they are an incurable type chronic patient with underlying causes that are always there causing the SIBO. And those underlying causes have symptoms of their own that are often the same. And so they have to manage symptoms more. So no matter what situation you're in, basically, particularly in the beginning, when it's going to take a little time, you want to get some treatment in there to help yourself feel better. And the other really important thing here is that these symptoms come from eating. That's how SIBO symptoms are generated. And the symptoms interfere with our eating. Like if there's nausea or a full stomach feeling or bloating and all these pain. And basically we have to be able to manage our symptoms so we can still eat, right? I mean, that is essential for life. So, and there's all these food sensitivities. So we have to calm these symptoms so we can approach diet a little bit better and our eating experience. So this is why it's so important to do symptomatic treatment. Now I have a whole handout that's free on my website. So actually, let me show you. You can, if you don't have it now, of course it's included in the course. And if you don't have it already, you can, let me just go right and show you right here. You can go to my website, siboinfo.com, and you just go to resources right here. You go to handouts, and here it is right here. So that's always available for free to everybody. So I have a whole handout on, come back to here, on all kinds of symptomatic relievers. And so what I want to do is just at least give you my top 3 favorite ones right now. In the course, I spend an hour and 15 minutes basically going over that handout and giving you all the nuances of these supplements and all the options, and I talk you through it all. So first, let me talk about bloating. My favorite symptomatic reliever for bloating is activated charcoal, which I just mentioned. So let me stop sharing, and I'm going to show you. I have a bottle right here. So this is the one that a lot of us are familiar with. It's by Nature's Way. You can get it in any health food store, drug store. It's often in grocery stores. It doesn't matter the brand. It does not matter. This is just a common one. And it's charcoal, it's these black It just looks like charcoal. Charcoal has the ability, it has this big surface area, and it has the ability to actually absorb gas. Now, technically, the word here is adsorb, which is just because the charcoal is absorbing things into it, whereas normally inside of our digestive tract, we're absorbing things into our body. The word absorb with a B means into our body. So adsorb means it goes into the supplement, it goes into the charcoal. So it can basically absorb gas, which is phenomenal. So it can bind it up and then it removes it out of the body. This is very, very helpful. The dose is usually 2. You can also take 3. You can take up to 4. And I'd say as many as about every 3 hours. You can take 2 every 2 hours, but it can take, especially if you're having a really bad bout of bloating with pain, it can take up to around 2 hours, a little over 2 hours to give you that relief, which is still pretty darn quick. It's a pretty fast relief, but you may not want to dose again until you at least give it a chance to do its job. So that's why I say about every 3 hours. So that's charcoal. The key thing is you don't take it with any other supplements, any other medicines or food. Now, if you're really in a bad situation, you've eaten and oh my gosh, you feel bloating coming on, you can take the charcoal. The idea is it's just going to make it so some of your nutrients you're not absorbing into your body. But look, for one meal, that's not a big deal. Like you're going to be fine. You're going to eat another meal and get those nutrients. So don't quibble about it too much. So I love charcoal. Now, moving on from bloating to diarrhea, charcoal is also my favorite symptomatic relief for diarrhea. So same product. Again, it can absorb fluid. It can absorb a lot of the metabolites and other things and can really, really help with diarrhea. Shivan, do you want to put in any of your feedback for having used charcoal for bloating or for diarrhea?
Charcoal is like this miracle for so many people, and I don't know if you mentioned it. I don't know if you've heard. I've heard you say it before, but it's often used like in emergency rooms. If people
didn't mention it.
Okay, you're the one who reminded me of that. And what's also so cool is that it's readily available in CVS's in the States. I mean, it's quite common in case you need it. But that's really what I always make sure in every medicine cabinet and in my purse I have some charcoal, because when you might not need it often, but when you need it, you're so glad you have it. It definitely works. Someone's asked, is charcoal constipating? And, I get constipated with binders frequently, so I just have to be very careful to make sure I do enough water. And that's my tip for you, is make sure you're drinking enough water and don't take it, like Dr. Siebecker said, close to other things. I
have a point about that. Let me just intersperse. Which is that it's surprising how many people don't get constipated with charcoal, particularly if you're just taking 2 or 3 capsules, like one time. Even if you take 2 capsules and then later in the day you take 2 more. I have constipation type SIBO, and it does not constipate me, but it also, in particular, does not constipate most of the people that I've given it to. And there are studies done on this, and the dose needed to actually cause constipation in the majority of people was about 60 times greater than what we use. Actually, it's about 70 times greater than what we use. So I do not think constipated patients should be afraid of taking it, especially because if you find that it is constipating, just increase your laxative dose a little bit, whatever you're using. And I'll get to that next.
Okay.
You're going to say what it does, an example of what it does for you.
I use it episodically. So I use it sort of like as a moment in time. I don't use it chronically. So I know other people really have a flow with it, and they've figured out a way to get a rhythm going with it where they do use it more frequently. And so Kimmy's saying, I heard that we're not supposed to drink large amounts of water at once between meals. Ideally you're sipping, but an extra half a cup or a glass of water, when you're taking your charcoal, that's the way I do it. That has worked really well for me. And another thing, just because we're talking about prokinetics and migrating motor complex, kind of backwards and forwards here, somebody's asking Dr. Siebecker regarding fluids about drinking like herbal tea will that mess up the migrating motor complex? And I just want to do a huge disclaimer here and say, if you are new to us, welcome. We're so thrilled to have you. If this is the first time you've come to one of these and you're just kind of like SIBO suspicious, or you're like, MMC, what? I thought that was a rap group from the 80s. Okay. That is okay. Know that there is context to be had. This is a very, this is part of the SIBO recovery roadmap algorithm that Dr. Siebecker showed you in the beginning. And one of the gifts that we've given to you for coming to this today is the SIBO recovery roadmap. So be sure to, print it out, stare at it, see where you are on the chart. But that's what the whole course is based on, is taking you through all these steps. And each one's kind of a rabbit hole, and we're just down the rabbit hole of Prokinetics and symptom relief right now. So I don't want anyone to be overwhelmed. I know. But it is almost like a second language. It is a flow. Think about the first time you tried to drive and you're like, I'm never going to be able to drive. Or you're like, oh, this is the greatest, and you took over the roads. I don't know. There's a learning curve is my point. So just take a breath, hang in there with us. This is exciting that you're on this journey and that the information is there. So I'd love to have you take that approach. Thank you.
Okay, so you brought up an interesting point about the question with, oh goodness, we're not supposed to have a lot of water between meals. And one of the reasons is that can, the thinking is, sorry, is that it could stop the migrating motor complex. But here's where we can get into perfectionism. And that's why I mentioned that thing about, oh, so if you just took some charcoal right after you ate, you're not going to die. You know what I mean? It's like, this is just in general, it's that the practice is to try to space it away from meals. But if you're having terrible bloating, and then that bloating is leading to pain, just take the charcoal. It's like, it's not what you're going to do for every day forever. Same thing. You want to take the charcoal, but then you're worried about constipation. You want to drink a little extra water. Drink some extra water. It's like one time point in your whole life. It's okay. Now the question about herbal tea. I believe the truth is we have no data on what that would do to the migrating motor complex. I would imagine ginger tea could potentially help it. But in general, we would think that fluids are not the best thing to take between meals, because the idea is that if you sip it, it's okay. The idea is if you take a bunch at once, it can indicate like as if a meal is coming, it stretches the stomach if you drink a bunch at once. And then the body thinks, oh, a meal's coming, and it stops the migrating motor complex. So I think just sipping should be all right in general.
And no calories. Remember the whole caloric thing, everybody. So if you're, again, not familiar with this, the migrating motor complex works when it is in the signaling of, I am not eating right now. It's that cleansing wave. And so any calories can minimize the effectiveness of the migrating motor complex, right, Dr.?
And then yes, this is true. So calories indicates that's food, that indicates a meal. So that's where water, herbal tea has no calories, black coffee, black tea. So you don't add any creamer or sweetener. Everybody then always asks, what about non-caloric sweeteners like stevia? And I've asked Dr. Pimentel about this. We have no studies on this. And what he has said is that it still triggers some of the same pathways in the body indicating that calories are coming. This is, I don't know if you've heard about this, but non-caloric sweeteners do that. It's one of the issues with them, is that the brain still interprets the sweet taste as calories. So it's his opinion not to have that. Guess what? I know lots of people that still do have it and feel like they're fine. Feel like their migrating motor complex is still working. The key is always individualizing to yourself, taking the general things that we say and applying it to yourself, but you do have to pay attention. You have to do an experiment with your mind, noticing it and see what you come up with for yourself. And also, you get to do whatever you want. You make whatever choices you want. It's like, okay, so if you don't, maybe you're like, nah, screw that. I'm just going to drink large glasses of water. Fine. We'll work with it. We'll work with that,
I love your attitude, Dr. Siebecker, because there was a rigidity that came over me and that I see so often in my fellow SIBO patients of like, because we've been devastated by the symptoms, right? I know you can relate. And so just having a little bit of ease around it is so helpful. And it's petrifying, I know, in many cases, because I was micromanaging every bite I took and I was like, oh, what's this going to do to me? And while I didn't get into an eating disorder, thank you, God, I could see how it could happen. I could totally see how it could happen. It would be a slippery slope, such a slippery slope.
Well, I do think there's a desperation that comes over us, particularly because the symptoms are so related to food. We eat and we get symptoms and then we don't want to eat. This is survival, we have to have food intake. So I understand that drive. It's wonderful to want to do everything you can and do it right. But that can harm us, and there's leeway here. There's leeway. And so what I'm trying to do, and whenever I teach, is I just tell you all the information, and then you can meld it to yourself. Did you have anything else you wanted to say before I went on?
I did, thank you. Just to touch on what BJ Goldman's saying, the question was one of the premises of this webinar that people knew that they had SIBO and diagnosed with SIBO with a positive breath test. And I just wanted to address that because a lot of people don't have the ability to get a recent breath test, and a lot of people are SIBO suspicious. This is for anybody who thinks they have SIBO, who is interested in delving more into a true formula for addressing SIBO. So no, it's not just for people who have the paper. It's for any of us who are knowledge seekers and trying to make sure we have this in our filing cabinet, our hard drive, so that we can move forward with our treatment. And that's the part of the algorithm, which we'll show you again, which you all, I hope, have downloaded, and we'll put the link up again. I hope my team just heard that and will do that for me, please. Thank you. Is that when you're in the algorithm, that's the beauty of that, right? You can go like, I'm here now, and then if I get a negative breath test, I can do this. If I get a positive breath test, I can do this, and we'll show it. But so this is for, you can plug yourself in anywhere on that chart, on that formula, on that recipe. It's a living, breathing document, which is so exciting, which is why the course is totally based on that. And when you're at the next breaking point, I have just a little announcement, Dr. Siebecker.
Well, in fact, let me just show the algorithm right now, because this is a perfect segue. What I'm talking about right now are symptomatic treatments. That's right up here. That's right under suspected, SIBO suspected, before it's confirmed. So this is exactly to BJ's point, if that was the name. You do not need to have a SIBO diagnosis to utilize that handout that I recommended. That's free on my website. And all these suggestions, that is not based on SIBO, that's based on diarrhea. The diarrhea could be from anything. Bloating, the bloating could be from anything. Constipation, we don't know why you're having it. That's sort of the point of symptomatic relievers, and actually why people find them frustrating and often don't want to do them is because there's no thought to why, right? It's just, oh my gosh, you're suffering in this moment, take this to feel better within a few hours, kind of like, ibuprofen or something like that. This is just a symptomatic reliever. So you don't need to know what you have to benefit from, particularly from the suggestions I'm recommending right now. So anybody can use charcoal for diarrhea or for bloating. And like Shivan mentioned, larger amounts of charcoal are used in the emergency room for poison exposure, toxin exposure, like, oh my God, for some reason you swallowed some poison or some paint or something like that. That's what they use it for, because it absorbs all the toxins and then it doesn't get into the person's body. So, and it's in the category of binders, and they're very, very helpful. We also use them actually whenever we're giving antibacterials in SIBO, in yeast overgrowth treatment, in various scenarios, wherever you would be taking, say, an antibiotic for the die-off symptoms that come from that, because they absorb all of those sort of metabolites that are released in die-off. So very, very helpful. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to the last one, which is the symptom of constipation. So I just wanted to give you my three remedies for, the three top symptoms, my three favorite remedies. So for constipation, my favorite laxative is magnesium. And this is my favorite brand that I like to recommend to patients. It's the Vitamin Shop. Oh, wait, I'm sharing my screen. Let me stop. Vitamin Shop. Oh,
Guys,
Shivan,
if you can't see Dr. Siebecker when she's sharing the screen, I realize it's because it might be just the way you're watching your Zoom, because you can see it, it's just smaller. But anyway, here we are with your Vitamin Shop, SHOPPE, right, for shop?
Yep. And then magnesium oxide. Now that's my favorite. Magnesium oxide is a stronger laxative. And the reason why is because it's actually not absorbed well into the body. So like if you were wanting to take magnesium to get the, the myriad of benefits, it has like 300 reactions it's used for in the body. The benefits of magnesium in your body, I would not recommend oxide because it's the least well absorbed, but that's actually what we're after for the use in a laxative. It sort of stays in the intestines a little longer, a little bit more, and that pulls through osmosis. It pulls fluid into the intestines, into the large intestine, and then that allows for a bowel movement. That's what an osmotic laxative is it just passively draws water in, and then that helps us to go to the bathroom. It fluffs up the stool and lubricates, and then there's better bowel movements. Magnesium oxide in some brands, I have had it reported from patients, can be kind of crampy. But this particular brand, that's why I like it. It happens to not give that reaction in so far in anybody that I've spoken to. Now, I'm sure there are people that have had that reaction because people can react in any way to anything, right? But I have not had that feedback. So that's why I recommend that one. And also the other thing is that the dose of magnesium that you need is usually typically for chronic constipation around 1,000 milligrams, and we take it at night before bed. That's the way I suggest it. What a lot of people do is they try a very well-absorbed, very good, expensive magnesium, and they take like 50 or 100 milligrams. And then they say magnesium did not work for my constipation. No, you need trioxide and 1,000 milligrams. Now, often people with really stubborn constipation will need even more. So they'll even need 1,200 or 1,400 or 1,500. The way you figure out your dose, and by the way, some people need less. Some people need 500 or 800. The way you figure out your dose is start with a certain amount. Like I would recommend start with 1,000 milligrams if you have really chronic constipation, and try that for 2, if not 3 nights before you decide what you think. Because when you first start taking magnesium, there's often like a backup. The person's been constipated, and it's like starting a train, like a locomotive. Like it's like takes more effort to get going in the beginning. Give it a few days before you decide to up your dose, because then what can happen is if you just way up it, well, then you have really intense diarrhea, and then you're like, this magnesium is awful, So you have to play with the dose. It's finicky. And then once you see what it's doing for you, like if it gave you diarrhea, pull your dose back. I would say by, 200 milligrams or something, or 300 milligrams. Don't give up. This is how you individualize treatments. Play with that dose. If you did get diarrhea from it, take some charcoal, right? If you didn't go to the bathroom yet, be a bit patient and we'll move it along. So that is one of the reasons I like this one. Since most people with constipation need around 1,000 milligrams, this is 400 milligrams. Let's see, where is that dosing? I don't know. Oh, right here. So 400 milligrams is a lot in one pill. You could just take 2 pills and start with 800 milligrams. If you took 3 pills, that's 1,200 milligrams. Now, lots of people like other types of magnesium and are very happy with other types of magnesium for their constipation. Many people take magnesium citrate and have a great time with that. I hear about all different kinds of ones. Here's another brand that I happen to have in the house that a lot of patients have told me they love. It is a magnesium oxide, has a little bit of potassium. It's Mag-O7. Now, I don't typically recommend this one just because I already have my favorite. But I hear lots of people saying they like it. Try whatever one you want. If you don't have if you only have a magnesium citrate in your local store, try that one, try, just know it. And one last tip I want to give is because we don't want the magnesium to absorb well into our body, it's best to take your magnesium at night before bed 2 hours away from food. So that might take a little planning. I don't know what your schedule might be like. Some people eat a late dinner and then they go to bed soon after. That will decrease the effectiveness of the magnesium. It's really noticeable when you leave 2 hours between when you've last had your last meal or snack and taking your magnesium before bed. So, I mean, honestly, you can try it yourself and see. Take it at 1.5 hours and see what it does, and then take it at 2 hours or 2 hours and 5 minutes and see what it does. It really makes a difference. So that's one last clinical tip.
Good stuff, Dr. Siebecker. Thank you very, very much. Thank you.
Okay, I want to just wrap up this symptomatic thing here and just say the other thing is that in those layers of treatment, if you're really aiming at trying to find the root cause, the underlying cause, which is in a very, very important goal for anybody who has stubborn SIBO, that can also take time. And it could also take time to find it, and it could take time to treat it. So again, here's where the symptomatic relievers help, along with the other SIBO treatment. So for anybody who needs it, you absolutely have my permission to help your symptoms during this whole process. And then the last point is that SIBO diets are excellent symptomatic relievers. Really, that is their #1 use and what they're best at. But that is a huge topic. I think I have something like I have like a 20-minute lecture on that in the course to be succinct. And then we included a 2-hour masterclass on diet. So that's a larger topic than I want to address here, but I did just want to mention it's an excellent symptomatic reliever. Okay. Oh, Shivan, anything?
Okay, thank you. I think part of the point that we are very careful about talking about is the DIY aspect. There's so much that you can do, as Dr. Siebecker just showed you. And of course, this isn't medical advice, you guys. This is, things that you can do over the counter. That's the whole beauty of her symptomatic relief lesson there, and to work with your practitioner. And I realize that not the practitioners in the world are not all SIBO literate and SIBO savvy, which is why Dr. Siebecker has so, consistently been teaching at the Naturopathic College and around the world about SIBO. And she created her own SIBO Pro course, which is fabulous. And if you are a practitioner and you haven't signed up for the SIBO Pro webinar, we are doing that on Sunday, day after tomorrow. So please reach out to us if you don't have that. If you are a practitioner, it is designed for practitioners, info@sibosos.com, and we'll get you hooked up there. But one of the things that you can do is empower yourself with education, which is what we're talking about, things that you can do in terms of mindset, things you might even have already in your own house already, which is exciting, but very strategic things that you can do. So there are a lot of DIY things you can do. We're not saying don't work with your practitioner. What we're saying is help yourself and educate your practitioner, right? Because you may need some prescriptions. And I used to walk into my doctor's office with my traditional GI doctor with studies, and bless his heart, he'd look at them and I would have highlighted like the part that was really important to make it easy. And then he'd be like, okay, this sounds good. Or like, oh, heck no, because of this. So, you've got to be your own patient advocate. There's no doubt about it.
Shivan, this was actually my third and final point, and you've already made half of the point. And so I'm
sorry.
No, I'm thrilled. You've taken the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say all these things. It's beautiful. So I just have a few points to add when you're finished.
Okay, no, go ahead, Dr. Siebecker. Do it. You're the one, girl.
You were going to say something. No, you were on a roll.
Well, I was just saying that if you are highly motivated, please stick around. We have a special announcement for those of you who do want to take the SIBO Recovery Roadmap course. Dr. Siebecker and I have very similar approaches to, I think, life in general, but also if you can't afford something right now, we get that. If you want to totally DIY it, you can go to her website, siboinfo.com. But I am going to take a few minutes, and Dr. Siebecker will too, to go through some of the highlights of the course so you can find out, like, what's the big deal? What's this all about? But in the meanwhile, we really wanted to provide you a lot of value so that you found this time worth your while either way. Okay, that was it.
Okay. So jumping right on, do it yourself. So that's my third point, is how to approach the healing of your SIBO, even if you don't have a practitioner or a doctor who is helping you. And as you said, Shivan, that is really the number one point of the course that we're in honor of today. Is that's why I and Shivan, why we both created this course, was to give you the information so you can do things yourself. And as you mentioned, really it's my preference that people can work with a practitioner so long as the practitioner is knowledgeable. And that's the problem, right? Is we don't have enough trained practitioners. And as you mentioned, Shivan, I'm working hard on that and have been for 10 years. But the reason that it's nice to work with a practitioner is because it is hard to be your own doctor, right? It's really wonderful when you have someone that you can work with who has good information and you can bounce things back off. But if you don't have that, then there is so much you can do yourself. So for instance, you can order the test yourself. And in fact, I have there's two labs that in the US at least that allow you to order the lactulose breath test yourself. And they are Direct Labs and True Health Labs. Normally, and I'm gonna put this in the chat. I have the, let me do this right now. I have the links. I just wanna do it so I don't forget. Oh, you know what? I'm not sure if the links are gonna come through. No, they didn't come through. Well, anyway, if you go to my website under resources testing, you'll see them there. So this is a wonderful situation because in the US, lactulose is a prescription item, and normally you have to have a practitioner to get that breath test. Glucose is the other form of breath test that you can get, and you can, or anyone can order that themselves, but that is not as good of a test. It's just not. So, but you can get the test yourself. Now, what about interpretation? You've ordered it yourself. What do you do? Well, I'm not going to go over it now, but in the course, I explain how to interpret breath tests. So that's, you see, this is what the course is for. It's for doing it yourself as best you can. There's different interpretation for each gas, and I go over that. I explain each one. Now, moving on, you can go and do treatment yourself with many of the supplements you need. So the elemental diet, like you couldn't do pharmaceutical antibiotics, but the elemental diet, you can get those just online, like Vivinex or Vivinex Plus or Neocate Junior are elemental diets that I use. Again, these are on my website and in the course, but you can just order those online for the ones that are like more supplemental, like by health food brands. There's functional medicine formulations. There's also my homemade recipe. So you can buy elemental diet yourself. You can buy all the herbal antibiotics yourself and apply that. But really the key is that you have the right information. And that's really what, I can't go through all of that right now, right? Because that's what we have a course for, because we're going to take questions in a minute. But just for example, things that you'll want to know is if you have the right information for doing it yourself would be like the proper dose of berberine. So I can tell you right now, many people, berberine is one of our main herbs we use for SIBO. Many people will take 3 or 4 capsules a day, and that's too low. We usually need at least 9 capsules a day. So they'll take 3 capsules a day for a month and say, that didn't work, this is all bunk. You need to have the right dosage information. Many times people don't do treatments long enough. Like for instance, there was an old dosing for the pharmaceutical rifaximin of 10 days, but it was changed to 14 days and the dose was increased. So you need to know those sorts of things, particularly like with herbal antibiotics. People can go too long. Some people will go and take it for like 3 months, but unfortunately, herbal antibiotics for most people, they sort of diminish in effectiveness after about the 6th week, even into the 5th and 6th week. So we use them for 4 to 6 weeks and not longer, because then it's time, you've gotten what you can out of it. It's time to assess and maybe switch treatments. And then just in general, on the topic of tough cases here, many doctors and patients often think that they're experiencing a tough case without really understanding the basics. So an example is, which is something that has happened to so many patients that I've had, and I hope that this hasn't happened to you listening, but it may have, is that they were given 1 round of rifaximin, which is the standard antibiotic for SIBO, for their SIBO or for their IBS. They felt better, right? So you felt better from it, and you're like, this is great. But then you relapsed, which is standard. That is standard and expected. It's only 1/3 of patients that don't relapse, and then that's wonderful when that happens. But 2/3 of patients will need more than 1 round. And so they relapsed, and then the doctor didn't treat them again. The doctor didn't know about Prokinetics, didn't know multiple rounds are needed, and then tells the patient, well, I don't know, I can't help you because this didn't work. And so I have nothing for you, right? So what if you're in that situation? What would you do? Now what? Well, treat it again, right? And this time, like if you're trying to do it yourself, you could use herbal antibiotics. So now treat it again. And let me show you on the algorithm, actually. Let me share my screen. So this is where that person would have been. They were given an antibiotic for 2 weeks, and then they were not given a prokinetic, but that didn't matter. They felt better. They're 90% better, but then they were not given any prevention, which includes a prokinetic, and then they relapsed. You see, this is standard. It's right here. This is a very common pathway that happens. What do? What would you do next? Start investigating your underlying cause. Just at least start thinking about that. And by the way, I have a whole class on that. What are all the underlying causes in the course, so that you can start to understand that. And then you retreat. So you follow this big arrow or line all the way around back up to your treatment options. So now, let's say you have to do it yourself because your doctor won't give you anything again. Now you can do herbal antibiotics, and just then at that point, when you're done, somewhere between 4 and 6 weeks, get on a prokinetic and see what happens. You'll probably feel better again, right? If you already did, you'll probably feel better again. Now continue taking your prokinetic. Make sure you're doing some meal spacing. There's other suggestions for prevention, and see how it goes. So that is how you use the algorithm, right? So those are the important points I wanted to make. Really just that if you are a tough case, if you're having stubborn symptoms, this is really what the course is for. It's both to explain the basics, if you don't know anything about SIBO, to help you to better work with your practitioner. Knowledge is empowering. And if you are a tough case, that's really what this course is for, stubborn symptoms, and doing it yourself. How you can get through this process with the information you need. And the key is it's not just to make it easier in that it's step by step, it's to make it more successful, right? Because I'm a SIBO patient too. So I care about success. I want to feel better. That's the end result. It's to help you have success. So that's it, Shivan. That's all I wanted to say.
I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. You can go ahead and stop sharing your screen for a second, Dr. Siebecker. You know, I want to also talk about this in just about 30 seconds of this. There's a lot online, and often it's not right. So there are a lot of people that have learned from Dr. Siebecker's work, which has been out there, you know, for free for a long time, and then they aren't experts themselves. So I want to learn from the originator. I want to learn from someone who's evidence-based and who has worked with thousands and thousands of patients. So that's why I chose to have Dr. Siebecker as my patient. I realized as my patient. Ha ha ha. I was super Freudian slip. I have no desire to be a doctor. Thank you.
Yes, I do just have to say, I find that incredibly frustrating. What happens is often a lot of patients that have been under my care, you know, it's a game of telephone, and I've taught things, but they don't have the medical mind per se. They don't have it exactly down, and it gets unfortunately twisted and blurred. And then they come out and do whole websites. Everybody and their cousin's brother's son has a website on SIBO, and it's very frustrating. Even there are people who have books out there that have very incorrect information in it, and you know, I can't change what's in their book. It's very difficult.
We're not talking about Christy Regan, by the way, who's wonderful and has books out there and cookbooks. I just wanted to
cookbooks, yeah.
And of course, we love Rebecca Coombs as well with her cookbooks. Lovely. So just a little side disclaimers. We have some wonderful people getting the proper information out. I just want you to realize that it's coming often from Dr. Siebecker. So you're really here with a source. I am going to stop the recording for just a second right now. So bear with me, hang on. Dr. Siebecker, would you be so kind as to open up the course so we can sort of get a tour through it?
Absolutely, I have it ready.
Okay, good. And then, yes, you do have to educate your gastroenterologist. You do. It's part of
Yes,
it.
I can actually tell you that unfortunately, the gastroenterology community is the slowest to come to it, and it's just unfortunate. I think when people feel they have an expertise, you know, obviously in gastroenterology, they can be a little bit resistant, whereas primary care physicians or general practitioners are usually much more open because they're used to taking the advice of other specialists and helping their patients implement the advice of other specialists. They don't have as much maybe ego upsetness. So usually it's easier to work with a GP or a primary care. Gastroenterologists are the slowest to come to it, I'm very sorry to say. So yeah, this is what the course looks like. So here it is, and I've brought up here lesson 23, which is herbal antibiotics, which we were just talking about. You can see how all the times are listed of the lessons. We have sections here along the left side. We've got 4 main sections, which you could do in weeks or just, you know, as sections. And we're in section 2 here. And so on the page, what you have is the video that you can watch. So let me just hit play so you can see what that's like. Then for the next one, it's oregano. Now this is the one I tend to use because it's emulsified. This is fine. So as you can see, we show products and explain everything and share brands. So there's the video, and then also you have the transcript you can read, you have the audio you can listen to, and you can download those. You can read the transcript right here on this page. And at the bottom is an area where you can mark if you've completed it. So here I mark this one as completed already. And up at the top, they have a little bar that shows your progress, which is nice. But this way, each lesson you mark when you've watched it, and that helps you remember and keep track. And so let me show you, if I was going to, I'll just go to the Prokinetic lesson. So like for instance, here on Prokinetics, here I have all the information about when to start it. You know, I go into much more detail. But down here at the bottom, I can mark it as complete. And then it put me right to the next lesson. And if I go back to the lesson I was just on, we have that, yay, you're completed. We have all your handouts up here, the class notes and the handouts. We've got studies you can bring to your doctor. And then the main courses in these is in the first three sections. And in section 4, we have all kinds of extras. All my master classes are here, various webinars I've recorded, giving you information, on and on and on. We have classes from nutritionists, cooking classes down here, all these extra master classes. So you get actually lots and lots of material, lots and lots of material. Shivan, anything else you want me to show?
Do you have the interactive algorithm up on your screen by any chance?
Do you have it?
I do. I was gonna show it if you didn't have it.
I actually have it, but if I show it, will you talk them through it?
Sure, absolutely. So this is new. This is something I've wanted to do for so long. No one else has access to this unless they're a past student. Oh, we have to talk about the updates, Dr. Siebecker. But what this is, if you want to click on one of the links, this is an interactive version of the algorithm. So you can say like, oh, you have, you know, you can literally go SIBO treatment. Oh, I have methane now, or I realize that you have methane. Ooh,
I might not just be signed in or something.
Okay. Well, when you're signed into the course, when you click on one of those links, it takes you directly to the lesson. So it's an interactive, it's one less step that you have to do, which we were really excited about being able to.
Yeah, this is amazing.
To accomplish. So let's say you want to know about the SIBO diets because you're there in the algorithm trying to figure that out. And then you just simply click the link and it takes you to those lessons and the cooking class. We took all of the organization and then put it into this live, even more live living document because we made these links active. If you're registered in the class and then you're logged in, it will work. So we can take that down if you want, Dr. Siebecker, but I just wanted to show you that to you because I know we have a lot of students here who have already taken the course and they just keep coming back for these great webinars, which we really appreciate. Love having you here. And a couple of things is that when you do sign up, if you decide to join us for the course, you are going to be receiving a bonus of a live Q&A session with Dr. Siebecker to address the things that you've been learning in the course. Now, here's the other thing. We update the course. So we've had this course for a while, and new information has come forth, thank God, right? And Dr. Siebecker and I are lucky enough to be able to have sessions with Dr. Pimentel, for example, and get updates from him directly. So cool. And then Dr. Siebecker will synthesize that information and then put it into the course. For example, right now we have a lesson called 26.5. And if you see those 0.5s, it means it's usually an update. And we let you guys know, like, oh, there's a new update to the course. And that is on the hydrogen sulfide test. So,
and not just the test, there are new treatments that don't come from Dr. Pimentel. I'm always gathering new information, figuring things out. Learning from others, sharing with my colleagues, and anything that's new, I will update for you. So we have new treatments and testing.
So it's I think that's a very big difference between what you might find in a course that's stagnant, but good. It could have been great, but then it's a moment in time that has passed. We're really working on making this a living, breathing, growing, evolving course. So I wanted to let you know about that. So if you do join us, are the links in the, hey, Betty. Betty's one of our students, one of the course, and she's saying, is that interactive algorithm in the course? Yes, it should be in your course. If not, email Clarissa and she will help you at info@SIBOSOS.com. But what I wanted to say is the links for signing up for the course should be in the Q&A right now and in the chat. If they're not, please, my team that's behind the scenes, please put them in there so everyone can sign up. If you want to join us, it is on sale right now. It's also with that certain situations, more even compelling to join us today. So I hope you will. I wanted to say thank you very much. Dr. Siebecker, we want to get into some Q&As right now. And I want to...
Perfect. And actually, I wanted to say that I'm just going to put in the chat the link to my website where you can find the links to those two labs that I mentioned, where you can order your own lactulose breath test. I don't know why the link didn't come through before, but there it is.
Well, and also there's a link on Dr. Siebecker's page to sign up for the course. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's there. And if you're a pro, if you're a professional, if you're a health coach, you are a gastroenterologist, you're and anything between, please join us for the webinar on Sunday. For the pro course, it's Dr. Siebecker's, literally SIBO pro course. It is not a webinar designed for patients. We are very, very enthusiastic patients, especially me. And we really thought long and hard about the way we formatted these webinars. So if you're a patient here right now, fantastic, you're in the right place at the right time. If you come to the pro course webinar, we actually don't suggest that you do, because it's really going to be designed for pros and it might end up frustrating you more, and we don't want that. But if you do come, we would not be taking your questions because we need to give time for the professionals to ask the questions. So that's it. And if you have questions about how to get a hold of that, if you are a pro, info@SIBOSOS.com. And Mariel has chatted in the chat section the information that you want to know about signing up today. And okay, well, let's get into some of those questions. I did have a lot of the questions addressed, a lot. We have a boatload of questions, don't get me wrong, but we did cover a lot of them. And I was noting when you answered them, Dr. Siebecker. Let's see here. Hey, Paul, how you doing? Great. Hold on. Let me get organized for a second. I want to go to the top of the list. Okay. What about aloe or aloe for SIBO?
Just aloe? You mean like aloe vera?
Yes.
Well, it is a mucopolysaccharide. Polysaccharide, saccharide, that's a carbohydrate that feeds bacteria. Or it has the potential to. It has the potential for them to be able to eat it and turn some of it into gas. And gas is what causes our symptoms. So it's something we should be a bit cautious of, but it doesn't mean you individually wouldn't tolerate it. Various forms of aloe are sold as laxatives, pills and liquid. If you're getting aloe vera juice, there are a couple of sort of weaker brands that I think SIBO patients tolerate well, like Lakewood That's usually in the juice section. Sometimes it's in the supplement section. And George's aloe vera. Those ones tend to be weak enough that it's not going to cause a disturbance. However, you can try any kind and see how it does for you. And that's always the situation with everything in SIBO for everyone. You can try it and see how you do with it.
Which is weird, okay? And it's kind of uncomfortable. It's liberating and yet uncomfortable. You know, sometimes too many choices is overwhelming, and especially when we want, and we talk about this in the course a little bit, we want, you know, big mama or big daddy in the sky just to go like, here, take this antibiotic, call me in 2 weeks, you'll be well. And unfortunately, that's not the dynamic of SIBO, which is why it's so freaking frustrating.
Yeah, if it was as simple as that, we wouldn't need to be having these webinars, educational websites, courses. It can be a tricky, finicky situation. It's an oddball because it's caused by something else, and then it's kind of right in there in the middle, and then it causes other things. And we do need, for all but the lucky few who are just handled, we do need to sort of, it's finicky. It's finicky. We need information.
From Marianne, how long can you safely stay on Motegrity? I have been on Motegrity since January of 2020, a 0.5 milligram dose. Now, this is not medical information. Marianne, she's just going to speak to this generally, as she's not your doctor.
It's not for you personally, but there are people who have been on, this is Prucalopride, who've been on this for, because we've been ordering it in from other countries until it finally came here, for 10 years or more. So there are, to my knowledge, with all the research that I've read, there are no safety concerns with long-term use.
From Stefan or Steven, he wants to hear about the connection between diabetes and SIBO. And he's worked really hard to get his diabetes under control, but the SIBO is so devastating. Dr. Siebecker, is there a correlation between people with diabetes and SIBO in a higher rate than other conditions?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Diabetes is an underlying cause of SIBO. And how it does that is because the glucose that's in the blood, there are certain areas in the body, like in diabetes, the glucose can't always get in where it needs to, into the cells. And so it's in the bloodstream, and there are certain parts of the body that don't have a gated system for glucose, and glucose can just go ahead and enter them, and then it's in high amounts and it can damage them. It can do basically oxidative damage, and those are nerves. So there are all kinds of nerve damages that come from diabetes. You know, diabetic ulcers in the legs also are an example of this effect. But a big effect here is the stomach and gastroparesis. So gastroparesis is slow stomach emptying, and this comes from nerve damage. Actually, I believe it's vagal nerve damage in that area. And that then leads to SIBO because the migrating motor complex works there's two ways it works. One is from the stomach and then through into the small intestine, all as one movement. And then there's another migrating motor complex that just starts in the stomach. And just starts in the small intestine. The one that starts in the stomach is thought to be stronger, more powerful. So if that one goes down, which it often does in diabetics, SIBO just occurs. So it's this neuropathy and nerve damage in diabetes that can lead to the SIBO. There are things to do for that. L-carnitine is often used for this, and also lion's mane mushroom is often used. These can help with the nerve damage that occurs. So, these are things we sometimes recommend in SIBO as well, to just be assuming that people, even from other causes, have nerve damage that is leading to their SIBO.
Jill is asking a classic question about neomycin for methane SIBO combined with rifaximin and the potential hearing loss concern. So it's great that you've gotten that far, Jill, that you're like, yeah, I've identified what type of gas I have and all that, but this is something that I know you like to clear up, Dr. Siebecker.
Yeah, so this is a very confusing thing because it has a warning that comes with it. But when I've investigated that, I found that, where neomycin causes problems is when it's taken IV, so intravenously. That is when it has those hearing hearing damage issues. And again, that is actually also nerve damage that it can do in the ears, but it does not do that when taken orally. I would not prescribe it until I found out about this. So I called like every pharmacist I knew in town and asked, have you ever heard a case of this occurring? And I never found a single pharmacist that had. I asked my colleagues on our big message boards, and no one had ever seen it. And Dr. Pimentel has done a study with neomycin and rifaximin for SIBO, constipation type, I guess now called EMO, intestinal methanogen overgrowth. And it was a large study with a lot of patients, and he actually was required by the FDA to measure their hearing before and after, and nobody had an issue in this study. So that made me feel safe. Now, what I'll say is, I can also say in all the people I've prescribed it to, which is, I can't even count the number, I have not seen that happen. However, if you have any kind of intuition about it, follow that intuition. You know, if you already have hearing issues, maybe don't take that one. You know, just follow your own intuition about these things. But in terms of the factual information that I shared, hopefully that will help you.
Okay. We got that. Oh, let's talk about the SIBO breath test and when to stop taking laxatives before that, and why that would impact a SIBO breath test.
Thank you. Yeah. So I recommend 5 days. Some people recommend more than 5 days. I think 5 days is sufficient. That can be tough to not be able to move your bowel. So what you can do is you can use Glycerin Suppositories, because that just stimulates the nerves down there at the sphincter, right in the anus, just to help have a bowel movement. You could also do an enema, because again, these are not affecting the small intestine. So the issue is when you take an oral laxative, it is bringing fluid, particularly, well, really all of them, in through the small intestine and then down through the large intestine. And it can basically purge some of the bacteria, which is a good thing, right? Purge, remove, and lower some of the SIBO bacteria. It's just, you wouldn't want to do that all the time. Because basically, wait, I'm confusing myself. I'm confusing myself between two things. What I'm getting confused at is that sometimes what happens is people will take laxatives and they'll actually give themselves a little bit of diarrhea, and you don't ever want to do that, like as a matter of course, before a test, because that can cause purging. And then you have a lower test result. But even if you're just taking them on a regular basis for methanogens, because there's different types of organisms that cause the different types of SIBO. And here we have methanogens causing the constipation type, which is obviously what's correlated in someone who's taking a laxative. Even just that daily amount can slightly lower the load. And we want to be able to get the load of bacteria. We want to be able to get a good view of really your real situation, because it changes our treatment. So if you can stop it for 5 days, very often, if you try this, if you do a test, if you had the money to do it and you did a test while on your laxative, and then you did a test while off, you will see a difference. And that's actually another reason why laxatives in SIBO are beneficial for symptoms, right? They're controlling a little bit of that load of bacteria. But so basically, that was a long and potentially confusing answer, but basically, it can give us a falsely low result. And we don't want a falsely low result. Like, what if you were borderline? That could take you into a negative. What if you were very, you had severe gas and now it brought it down into just the high? That actually changes the amount of treatment courses that we estimate a person's going to need when we see that gas level. And we make different choices on that. Like, for instance, between elemental diet versus antibiotic and herbal antibiotic, based on the gas level. So it really changes our whole prognosis. We want the accurate results.
Okay, I've been reading a lot of these questions. Dottie is talking about how she's done a lot of treatments. Why do we relapse so often? When you look, can you pull up the algorithm again, Dr. Siebecker? You have to figure out your underlying cause. Okay, so that is why it's on the bottom of the algorithm. You do all this stuff, you reduce your bacterial load, you take your Prokinetic, right?
It's right down here.
It's right down there. Dr. Siebecker casually mentioned this. see, it's finicky, right? So SIBO is caused by something else, and then SIBO causes other things. SIBO, small intestine bacterial overgrowth. So you have this overgrowth of the bacteria in the small intestine that is caused from, let's talk about some underlying causes, Dr. Siebecker. You want to just whip some out there and just drop some of the potential underlying causes, if you would?
Absolutely. So food poisoning, bacterial food poisoning is our #1 most common cause. Unfortunately, we don't have a cure for that. That causes the nerve damage in the small intestine. Dr. Pimentel is researching to try and find a cure for that. But right now we don't have a cure for that. And that's the most common cause of SIBO, right? And with the food poisoning, it can develop up to 3, even 6 months after the food poisoning. So you don't even link it, right? There's also a test for this. There's a test to figure out if this is your underlying cause, and it's called IBS SMART by Gemelli Labs. So you can take that test. It's a blood test, and see if that's how you find out if this is your underlying cause. Very important. We mentioned diabetes. Probably I would say the second most common underlying causes are adhesions. These are scar bands that form inside the abdomen and can compress or twist and onto the small intestine, and basically make it so it narrows the opening of the small intestine in an area, so that now bacteria back up behind where it's being compressed. And that's bacterial overgrowth. What causes adhesions? Any kind of surgery to the abdomen has the potential to cause that. Endometriosis causes that. Appendicitis causes that. Any kind of sports injury, car accident where there was a blow, like steering wheel went into the abdomen, fall off a horse, I don't know, you were in a fight with somebody and there was a blow, somehow trauma to the abdomen. There are many other things. Infection, trauma, inflammation can cause adhesions. Inflammatory bowel disease causes them, many other things. So those are adhesions. And then other causes would be diseases like Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is not a rare disease, very common actually, causes SIBO. Hypothyroid, extremely common, can lead to SIBO. We said diabetes. What are some others I'm not thinking of right now, Shivan? Toxic mold illness, which is extremely prevalent. That can also slow the migrating motor complex. Lyme disease, very prevalent. We think parasites can lead to parasitic infection, which is extremely common.
Did you say endometriosis?
Endometriosis, yeah, that due to adhesions and also the swelling of the endometrial tissue itself. Inflammatory bowel disease, celiac disease, a lot of other GI disorders. I wish I could just remember everything else.
I mean, that's a lot.
Systemic sclerosis. There's so many diseases that can lead to the nerve damage or to adhesions in the entire. But I mean, honestly, we could have stopped right at food poisoning. I mean, that's
right.
That's 80% of people, believe it or not. And then there's people like Shivan. She's very open and sharing with her underlying causes. She has like 5 different underlying causes that all cause SIBO. She's had food poisoning. She has Ehlers-Danlos. She's had mold exposure in her workplace. Many other things.
Yeah, it's been a good time.
Lyme.
Yeah.
So then, so whomever, Betty, I think it was asking this question, what if you're someone like Shivan, then you have to work at all of those. You see how it's complicated. And back on the, let me just quickly show you the PowerPoint I had, where was it here? This is why I had a picture of a medical degree next to underlying cause, right? This can be very complicated, even for well-experienced doctors.
It is exciting, though, that there is progress and that there's hope. So we're just talking about, a lot of the problems and solutions, but I want to just talk about the emotional aspect of it, which is that.
Well, actually, let me just quickly put in there that while it's complicated, that the hope here is that it doesn't, there are things to be found, and then how great if you find them, then you know what's going on, and then there are treatment. There are treatments for all of these things. When I said that there's no cure for the food poisoning type, that doesn't mean you can't feel 100% better. You could be 100% symptomatic relief. It's just we don't know how to ultimately make it go away. And it just means you need to continue to take some things like a Prokinetic ongoing to make sure you stay 100% better. But what were you going to say?
I wanted to invite everybody to open the link, look at the information about the course, because it really goes over what you get very thoroughly. And remember, in this case for this semester, and we don't always do this every semester, you would be getting a live Q&A with Dr. Siebecker. And it's not instant, right? We give you time to absorb the class and go through the class and maybe get your breath test or get another, a script going. So, so it's not like the class, this window of the savings of $100 in this particular case does end October 22nd. And so I can't remember when we're doing that Q&A, Dr. Siebecker, but it's not like,
we're calling them group coaching sessions, because
right.
That's really what it is. It's come together as a group, and let's all share questions together and learn together from everyone's cases and questions, really. And I'm really looking forward to it. But let's do more questions today.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Let's see. So can gluten intolerance be an underlying cause of SIBO? Great question, Gabriel.
I am not sure about that. That is nothing that has shown up in studies. So this would be non-celiac gluten sensitivity. I don't know. I mean, I can think of maybe, but also maybe not. And again, this would probably just be a risk factor. Risk factors can increase, many of what we call underlying causes are really risk factors. They have the ability to increase your risk, but it doesn't guarantee that it's going to cause it. Whereas something like when the migrating motor complex becomes deficient, that will cause SIBO, like no matter what. It's more a matter of what causes that, right? So diabetes could cause that, but diabetes might not cause that deficiency of the migrating motor complex. So that's why diabetes is a risk factor. It's not guaranteed that you're going to get it.
Maria,
go ahead.
I have a new question. So you want to finish that thought?
Yeah, we didn't also, there was another thing that that Betty was asking and everyone was asking, like, why do I keep relapsing? So underlying cause is a big one. But one other thing that people could think about is using an antibiofilm with their treatments. I think really the key reason why we have relapses is because there's a cause there still. But think about using antibiofilm remedies, and I like the bismuth ones. And one that you can get yourself and take with your next treatment is Dr. Paul Anderson's, which is Advanced Biofilm Phase 2. I might be saying that slightly out of order, by Priority 1. So that's one you could try adding to your next treatment, but always look for your underlying cause. And as mentioned, we have an entire class on this in the course. And also another thing to think about is your differential diagnosis. What else might you have going on along with SIBO too? Because people have more than one thing wrong with them very often, like we gave the example of Shivan. And so that's the other thing to think about. Differential diagnosis just means what are all the diseases that cause the same symptoms as SIBO? So those are things to consider as well.
And there's a whole section on that too. Like Candida, a lot of people are asking about overgrowth of yeast. It can make it so it's and a lot of us can have them simultaneously.
Well, yeah, it's very common to have those two things together. Those are there are a lot of coexisting conditions with SIBO, and then we have to treat each, and they have different treatments. And it's important to identify that both of them are there. And by the way, let me just quickly show you this back in the algorithm. Let me just quickly share my screen, because this is important. So here on the algorithm, I like to recommend that after you're finished with your main antibacterial treatment round, if you are not feeling better, that you do another test. Now, I understand not everybody can afford it, but I want you to understand why I recommend it. Because if you are still having symptoms, do not assume that they're from SIBO. This is the perfect scenario when someone also has yeast overgrowth. You could take that test and the test could be negative, meaning you no longer have SIBO. And now you have to think about what else is there, what else is going on that can be causing the symptoms you're still having. So in that case, a yeast would be probably one of the first things that I would look at. So that is a very important strategy. Don't always assume. So in fact, that's another point for Betty and everyone asking about why am I relapsing so much? If you're not doing retests, you might not actually be relapsing, so to speak. You might have another condition. Your SIBO's now gone, but the other condition is what is causing your symptoms intermittently. Maybe it was helped a little bit by the treatment you did for SIBO. So that is actually incorporated right into the algorithm. So to help you avoid that pitfall.
Let's talk about hydrogen sulfide for a second. And for those of you who are new, there are 3 different kinds of gases. There's the methane, there's hydrogen, and there's hydrogen sulfide. And there's a new test out that Dr. Pimentel and his team have created to test all 3. It's called Trio Smart. They're making the official announcement to the public October 27th. I just found out. But
I had it in my quarterly newsletter for those of you, you may not be getting it, but I just had it in my newsletter last week, who can sign up on SIBO info.
So Elizabeth is saying she has a friend who's undergoing hydrogen sulfide treatment and is using Alinea. What do you think about that, which is normally an anti-parasitic drug?
Yeah, I have good feelings about it. It's called nitazoxanide, the actual drug name, for anyone who might be listening from another country. And it actually has shown to be effective against archaea. Archaea are the organisms that create the methane. So Methanobrevibacter smithii is it's not a bacteria, it's an archaea or archaea. So we know for sure that nitazoxanide has activity for the methane type SIBO. We are not as sure for hydrogen sulfide, but I think a lot of us feel positive about that. So it's kind of experimental for that use, but I support the experimental use for it, for trying it for hydrogen sulfide. I think it has a good prognosis. So we'll have to see what winds up happening. And also consider, with that, you could consider a bismuth antibiofilm with that, like I just mentioned, Dr. Anderson's. That can be very helpful.
And what do you think about, and a lot of people when they're just getting started, this certainly happened to me, about food sensitivity tests and how they could relate to SIBO? Because I think a lot of us do that, right? Like, oh, I'm having bloating, I'm having a weird food reaction. I go to if I'm that advanced, or I go to someone who's advanced enough as a practitioner and they say, let's start with food sensitivity. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so I think these tests have a place. And then maybe they have a little bit of caution. So let me start with the caution. The caution is that if you've already put yourself on a restricted diet, a SIBO diet, or your practitioner has, and then you do a food sensitivity test, and then that will show you things you're reacting to that you'd want to remove, you're removing more and more foods. And so you have to be practical about it. Maybe that's not the best thing to do, because then you're going to be eating less and less foods, which is not a good situation. On the positive side, what if you do a test and, it's just a general screen, and, the idea is it doesn't mean it's a for sure thing. What you're supposed to do with what shows up positive is remove them for a time and then add them back one by one and actually test for your own self what is true for you. It's like even the biggest experts you speak to on this will say it's not for sure when you see it on the test. You have to find out if it's true for you. So the positive is, what if you find some foods that really are causing some symptoms, and then you feel a lot better. So there's a plus and a minus. Generally, because I see people on very limited diets, I don't do them because it's not worth the risk of removing more foods. So there's an argument for and an argument against, and you have to just decide where you fall in there. I know it can be it's a very helpful thing to remove foods you really are having some kind of an immune reaction to. By the way, this is an immune reaction on food sensitivities, not usually a digestive reaction. The digestive reaction we have in SIBO is due to gas fermentation by bacteria and archaea. These are usually immune system reactions, often more like, overall inflammation, overall pain, nasal mucus, rashes. There could be a digestive reaction, but it's not as common. So it's very good to stop eating a food that is causing an overall inflammation for you. It can help you heal. So it's just a pro and a con.
Okay. Digestive enzymes, yes, no, maybe. Well, go ahead.
Yeah, those are on the algorithm. Those are what I would call the first and second line therapies. Let me share the screen again. So that's right here, first and second line therapy. So basically, as soon as you are starting to realize you have digestive symptoms, there are some basic things that any of us can try. Probiotics, fiber, digestive enzymes, hydrochloric acid, digestive tonics, apple cider vinegar, all these sorts of things. That's right up in here. So I think that digestive enzymes are a very good thing to try as soon as you notice you're starting to have symptoms, and then you can see how much it helps you. So it's really just a matter of you try them and you see if it helps you. And there are many, many good digestive enzymes on the market. There are all kinds of ones.
Okay. And what about Creon?
Creon's also great. That's a prescription digestive enzyme that it actually has a higher amount of amylase for fat digestion. So in particular, if you think you're having problems with fat digestion, that one's very good, but that's a great one. If your doctor has prescribed it, try it. You can also additionally or separately try the over-the-counter ones as well.
Okay. If anybody has been a student of the course, like Betty, I see a lot of you, Runta, I'd love to just have you pop into the chat box if you felt like you were helped by the course. I know that a lot of you already have, and maybe you're not even in the same room anymore and you've gone wandering off to do housework and you're coming back in and out. But if you do get a chance, that would be great. I just need to do one technical thing here. Stand by, Dr. Siebecker. Okay, there we go. We just have somebody who needed some extra little help. Okay. We took care of you, Elizabeth. What about SIFO? So some of you might not even know what that is. We've been talking a little bit about Candida. When you see that in the Q&A box, I don't want you to be confused. Like SIBO, wait, did she just misspell did she misspell SIBO? And what's SIFO, if you could?
It's small intestine fungal overgrowth, and it could be synonymous with the word Candida or yeast. So all of those kind of mean the same thing. That when we say SIFO, we're really talking about yeast overgrowth or Candida overgrowth in the small intestine itself. Many people have, as they've traditionally learned about Candida overgrowth, yeast overgrowth, intestinal yeast overgrowth, they've thought of it in the large intestine. But the newer finding from Dr. Rao is that it can absolutely be in the small intestine also. And what he found is that it causes the exact same symptoms as SIBO. So that's what the differential diagnosis is I was mentioning before. I know that's a medical term, but it's the number of diseases. What are all the diseases that cause the same symptoms? So that's why at the top of the algorithm, when it says SIBO suspected, you can try some things, you can try some treatments, but when you suspect it, then you have to test. Because without testing, or it's very recommended to test, without testing, how do you know that what you have is either SIBO or SIFO? And the treatments are different. So that's why it's so important to diagnose your condition. What do you have? What is wrong with you? And it might be both, right? And that's that algorithm of I showed you how, well, okay, so let's say you only test for SIBO, because it's hard to test for SIFO. Let's say you test for SIBO, you know you have it, you treat it, and then you realize eventually you got rid of it, but you still have symptoms. That's probably why the very first thing you'd look for next is yeast overgrowth or SIFO.
Okay. You guys are doing great. Thank you.
Amazing questions.
Amazing questions. Thank you. Rachel saying that she benefited from the course. I'm so glad. This just makes us so happy. We have so many testimonials and we really appreciate it. We're very proud of this class, this course. Yay, thank you. Let's see. Hey, Devin, thank you. You know what? I think the other thing is, because I've certainly bought courses before and I've never opened them. But I have taken some courses that have changed my life. So I want to just say that if you're not ready right now, put a little reminder on your calendar, like get it while you can at this nice discount. And then just, pick up like in 10 days, 20 days, 21 days, a month from now, and just give yourself a little tickler with a username and password to go in there and look. I tend to be a little bit cynical and think nothing's going to work, but I know this works. I know this works because it has been what has helped so many people, certainly me. This is why we did it, because it does work.
This is a super important point. Like in general with SIBO treatment, because I know we said this was about stubborn symptoms. We said this was about tough cases. And so I'm sure we have a lot of people listening like that. I wish I could speak to each one of you individually so I could, figure out exactly what it is that's gone wrong somewhere in your treatment or what knowledge you need. But in general, if we look at our treatments for SIBO, we look at the algorithm and what we know to do, it really, really works well. So if it hasn't worked well for you, there's just a step missing somewhere. And I would love for you all to be able to find what that is, because basically, I think there's only been probably, I'm a SIBO specialist, probably about 3 patients that I wasn't able to help their symptoms. In fact, I think I was able to help all of their symptoms, not even just with symptomatic relief, with SIBO treatment, even super complicated. And I am better. Shivan is better. Most everyone who's a SIBO advocate is better. And that's why we are. We're so inspired that we got our lives back. So I just want to say there is so much hope for you here and help. And if you're still struggling, there's probably just a step that needs some fine tuning, or maybe a step you weren't aware of. And that's what we want to help you with.
Okay, here's the other thing that I just was reading from Betty. As a past course member, I refer to the course contents frequently. I learned so much. However, I concentrated on the type of SIBO and certain symptoms. And then later, I had a different type of SIBO, and I had an excellent resource to help me once again. I definitely recommend this course. Thank you, Betty, who's also a medical professional herself. So that's what I'm talking about. It's a living, breathing algorithm that we keep updating, that you can go back to and refer to time and time again, and the bacterial load could come down, you retest, it keeps coming down, you get a negative breath test, rock on with your bad self, but then maybe you get food poisoning again, which, by the way, we do help you to try to avoid in the course, and then you get back on the cycle. So, but you're now empowered, right? So I used to totally freak out if I thought that I had food poisoning, and I got my first food poisoning pretty much in the same year, double whammy of, I used to live in New York City as a little girl. We went to a farm in upstate New York, and we were milking cows, which is hysterical to see me milking a cow with the little city girl. And then we drank the unpasteurized milk, who was supervising me? I don't know, and got totally sick. Then my family is from India and Ireland. So I go to India with my family, and of course, who knows what I ate? I got sick. And so this all happened in the same year. And then after that, my father, who was Indian, was very concerned with, bowel movements and cleansing. Not very concerned. It's just it's a concern if they're not regular. And he happened to notice that. And so I remember one of my first earliest memories associated with my health was that my mom was asking me about that. And then I didn't realize that there was something wrong with that. And then here comes the shame. That was one of my first shameful experiences, which, by the way, was very mild compared to what other people go through. But it was an experience that, however many years later here, I remember. So I was like, Mom, don't be in my personal business. I'm 5. But this is real. You guys are not crazy. It's not all in your head. There are answers. It's so exciting that we live in a time where we can actually do this during a devastating time on the planet. Don't get me wrong, but the fact is that we're connecting here from all over the world. Hello, shout out to Israel right now, who's with us as well. And we're able to get the information we need. Literally, neither Dr. Siebecker nor myself need to do this. I have a very happy TV career where I do not need to do this. I want to do this for you because it almost took me down, people. This was so stressful for me. And working in a molding building for 20 years, I was getting worse and worse and worse. And I thought I had cancer. I was losing it. I was going to work, going home, taking a shower, getting into bed, sleeping for 12 hours, waking up and doing it again. That was my life for a very long time. And I told no one about it. And I finally went to a gastroenterologist who didn't know what he was talking about. I could cry. Then I didn't give up. I have a girlfriend I have a lucky bestie she's like my muse. It's very strange. Her name's Lisa. And I don't even think Dr. Siebecker knows about Lisa. But whenever I talk to Lisa, I always move my life forward, whether she introduces me to a gastro, she introduced me to my gastroenterologist, whether she tells me about this like new hair salon, whatever. Like Lisa's my lucky charm. And she's the reason I went and got the next step of my diagnosis, because I switched to a different gastroenterologist. You know, when the universe puts things in front of us, often we don't listen. And that is devastating because the universe gets so frustrated with us. I know, because they're trying to help us. And when I find myself opening myself up to the clues and my intuition, and I do the right action, the next right step, I find I do make great progress. And that is what I wish for you. And if this is calling your name, then join us. If you're like, this is awesome, ladies, but it's not for me right now, that's cool too. So lots of space. It's not for everybody. If you are a person, who's not it for? It is not for someone who wants to be saved by someone else. Okay. We are here to assist you as guides. That is literally why we picked the longest name of a course in the history of mankind, the SIBO Recovery Roadmap course. It doesn't roll off the tongue, but it really is literally that. It's a map. It's a guide. It's a very much proven formula. And so that's my pep talk. Okay, that's why I'm getting off the high horse right now. What else can we do, Dr. Siebecker? We have been at it for almost 2 hours. We will wrap.
I can do a few more questions. I can go for like 5 more minutes. Let's do it.
Okay, great. What's the lapse period between treatment and switching medications from herbal to pharmaceutical, or from pharmaceutical to herbal? And that's very important, because if your doctor won't give you that second or third round of rifaximin, you're going to be looking for alternatives.
The lapse time, meaning like how long should you wait between rounds kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is so important. I like to go no longer than about 2 weeks, but I really do like to have a period of being off of them between rounds. It's a question that comes up for a lot of people. If you wait for longer than 2 weeks between rounds, you could relapse, or really it's backslide. Basically, you're just not done yet with your whole bringing the bacteria down. And in this 2 week period, be on a prokinetic and try not to make it be more than 2 weeks. And honestly, that will really increase your success to not wait longer than 2 weeks. 2 weeks is the most common backsliding time, relapse time between rounds. But then people say, well, why not? Why wait at all? Why not just go from round to round without checking in between? So you can do that if your original test was very high, gas. And what's, for me, severe is above 100. So then you know you're going to need multiple rounds, which I haven't explained this, but this is a piece of gold information, is that we can calculate project the number of treatment rounds we need, because on average, pharmaceutical and herbal antibiotics bring gas down somewhere around 30, 35 parts per million, something like that. Let's just say 30. Elemental diet brings gas down on average about 70 parts per million per round. It's huge. This is the main benefit to elemental diet. But let's say you were given rifaximin, you had a gas level of 100, and you were given rifaximin, you know you're going to need probably like 4 rounds, 3.5 to 4 rounds. So you could not check after your first round. You could just do 1 round and immediately move right into the second round, trying to sort of save money. Because what you normally do in between is you retest. If you can't afford that, at least you assess. So it's important to have some time where you're off the treatment, and now you see, how are you doing? What symptoms are reduced? Where are you at? And in that period is when I like to retest. If you can afford it, it's the best possible thing to do, because then you have all the information you need for the most success. So that's what I would say. Don't wait any longer than 2 weeks. But if you can, do take a break and get a retest. It helps you guide what you're going to do next. It really does. And if you have high gas, it's okay, particularly in the beginning, to do 2 rounds back to back. That's what I would say.
Let's see. Ooh, Courtney. And take a breath on this one. How can I get rid of Giardia, which is a parasitic, common bastard of a parasite, as a root cause of SIBO? I took Flagyl, but it didn't help. Now doing herbals for a month, but still no relief. And I'm kind of wondering about what parasite test you did. Thanks.
Well, unfortunately, I am not a parasite treatment expert, so I can't say I've spent all my time on figuring out how to reduce and get rid of SIBO. I have not spent all my time on figuring out how to reduce and get rid of Giardia. So I don't have an appropriate answer. Anything I say would not be from a specialist on Giardia.
Well, there it is, guys. If you want to know how to deal with SIBO, listen to Dr. Siebecker. It's like, that's it. I'll just say, check out Jay Davidson's site. Something he does deal with parasites. So you might want to look at that.
Also, we have a masterclass by Ann Hill who talks all about every parasite.
I'm sorry, I didn't mention that first. Go to SIBOSOS.com, look under resources. There's a masterclass that could be changing the trajectory of your life. It's $59 with Dr. Ann Hill on parasites. It is a masterpiece.
She's amazing. She is the greatest specialist on parasites that I know. I told her she had to do this class for Shivan so we could answer your questions on this.
Right, exactly. Okay, let's see. We have about 4 minutes left, less than that actually, but if you guys could start typing in some love for Dr. Siebecker into the chat and the Q&A box, we always share that with her. And I make her put it on a refrigerator, so when she's feeling discouraged, like we can't reach the 1 billion people with SIBO, I make her read those. So please do that. We will be sending out a replay, so if you missed part of it, no problem, absolutely no problem. And when you're saying you're getting a negative breath test, I just want to make sure that the person who has written down the word negative actually knew what they were doing, because I had someone write the word negative on my breath test, but it was actually positive because they didn't know how to read the test. So just want to be very encouraging to you about that.
And also breath test interpretation is very confusing because different labs have different criteria they use. Different doctors have different criteria, different studies use different criteria. There has been an attempt to standardize it, and I actually agree with almost all of that, but not fully all of it. So I go over all this interpretation, and it's very important for you to understand interpretation criteria so you can assess whether you agree with it. Because this is Shivan's story. She had a positive breath test, and someone, I don't know if it was the doctor, didn't know how to interpret it and wrote negative, and it was positive. And that changed her life for years because she thought, well, I don't have SIBO. And she did. So very important to understand breath test interpretation.
Just queens me out.
Let's do 2 more questions.
Okay. Let's see. Interesting. Okay, J.A., excellent question. Is there a blood or other lab test one should ask for in diagnosing SIBO besides the breath test?
Well, the IBS SMART test. So that's the blood test that tells if you have SIBO from food poisoning. And here's the thing, since the majority of people have SIBO from food poisoning, it's in this scenario, it's also IBS. There's a type of IBS that's called post-infectious IBS. And that in this scenario, that is the exact same thing as SIBO. Those 2 names mean the same thing in this case. Since the majority of people have it from food poisoning, that means that if this test is positive, you now know you have SIBO and you know your underlying cause. If the test is negative, then that's going to be the people who have SIBO from adhesions, who have it from Ehlers-Danlos, who have it from diabetes, all those other causes, hypothyroid. But it's a fantastic screening test for SIBO because it can catch the majority of people if it's positive. Now, if it's positive, I still recommend getting the breath test because it tells us which gases are positive, particularly if you get the Trio Smart, the new test that tests for hydrogen sulfide. Then we'll see which gases are there, and then we know which treatment to give you and how many rounds we're going to need.
Okay, Ehlers-Danlos, Natalie. I'm very glad you just put a question in there about ED, Ehlers-Danlos. We do touch on it in the course. I have it, a mild case. There is a masterclass by Dr. Alina Guggenheim at SIBOSOS.com, another doctor, Dr. Siebecker introduced me to, and it is on Ehlers-Danlos and SIBO and Ehlers-Danlos in general. Please go to SIBOSOS.com and find that under resources and education. It's a drop down.
Classes, yeah. Because this is it is also a common cause of SIBO. I wanted to be sure you had resources for learning about that. I am not an Ehlers-Danlos expert, but Dr. Guggenheim is. So she can tell you everything about it, how to treat it, etc.
Okay. She's not taking patients right now. Watch her masterclass, because I
That's
think
just for the information. It's not there's other Ehlers-Danlos doctors, but at least it's just like with the SIBO course. At least you'll be empowered now with what you need to know. And yeah, go ahead.
Okay, we have a Facebook group, SIBO SOS community, where Dr. Siebecker occasionally stops in, where we have a great community of, last I counted, it was over 17,000 people. We do moderate it. So find that on Facebook if you haven't already. I have, as a rogue, streamed this webinar on there. Wasn't planning on it, just clicked the button and did that. So I hope the people on Facebook have been able to join us and just were stumbled into it, and the recording will be there. You will be receiving the recording by mail, remember, if you have registered with us through the email channels. Yeah, Kimmy is saying that masterclass on Ehlers-Danlos is very much worth investing in. Yeah, I almost cry in the class. You'll love it. It's very emotional for me.
But I think what you were going to say, I'm sorry to cut you off right when you're talking about your emotions, is that in the Facebook group, you can probably ask people for referrals of who they see for their Ehlers-Danlos, what doctor they see. There are other people getting well-trained now on Ehlers-Danlos. Awareness is being raised. Honestly, that's a condition like SIBO that needs a lot of awareness raising and good doctors being trained and treated, because it's actually very common and causes digestive troubles in SIBO. Okay, let's take one more question.
Okie dokie. Give me just a second. Oh my gosh, Barbara has kidney issues. I have methane SIBO with stage 3 kidney disease and no natural doctors near me. I want to say something about that afterwards. Also, histamine intolerance. My GP and gastroenterologist only want to throw drugs at me, and they didn't work because of my kidney decline. have banned me from supplements. Yikes. Can SIBO affect or cause kidney problems? What's your experience, Dr. Siebecker?
I haven't seen that connection, but that doesn't mean it's not there. It could be there. And I since I haven't seen research on it, I honestly haven't thought much about it. So I can't comment further on that. But one thing that could be considered in a case like this, but you of course have to talk to your doctors about it, would be the elemental diet. And with kidney disease, there are amino acids. So those are proteins. Potentially you could do a homemade and alter that. So that is something you could discuss. I think there are elemental diets for kidney disease, actually. So look into that. The idea with an elemental diet is that you have simple sugars that it absorb quick enough, high enough up in your digestive tract that they don't get the chance to feed the bacterial overgrowth. And so then the bacteria starve while you're getting fed, and you do it for 2 weeks. So it's not easy. And this is certainly in your case, you have to check this through with your doctor. That could be a consideration.
And let's say you said something about not being able to find a natural doctor. So if you do go to Dr. Siebecker's site, siboinfo.com, and certainly to sibosos.com, and even on the bottom of our emails right now, we have a link where you can download our speaker list. And many, especially with what's going on with the planet and COVID, are now doing telemedicine. So just because you don't live in Portland, Oregon, the hub of SIBO healing, with so many, like 5 specialists there, the highest concentration on the planet.
Lena Guggenheim's here, everybody's here, that's how I know them all, they're all my friends.
Right, and Dr. Siebecker has taught many of them, and they're all trading notes and stuff. It's so wonderful. People are doing telemedicine like never before, and there are specialists to be found for kidneys. And when we give it a whole set lesson on this and how to find a doctor and questions to ask and how to backward engineer to getting some of the scripts or finding a lab. So there are a lot of tried and true techniques for getting the help you need, although at first it doesn't seem obvious, right? It's about persistence in many cases, but also you need tips and tricks. So Barbara, don't give up. I'm glad you're going to check into the elemental diet for kidney disease. And if you need help, check out our speaker section. And maybe it's not anybody there, but maybe that person knows somebody.
And even like Shivan was saying, that on my website, although I'm not seeing patients right now, if you click under contact, Skype consultations, I have 3 covering doctors, all of whom I've trained and all of who are really experts in their own right. Head of the Gastroenterology, Naturopathic Gastroenterology Association, President and Vice President are my covering doctors. So, and they do telemedicine, and that's really worth a consult.
I know somebody's been asking about SIBO in kids. Certainly one of the people that Dr. Siebecker, do you want to mention who you would send?
I have to go. I am so sorry because now I have another appointment. And I really hope I have the opportunity to answer more of your questions for those of you joining the course. And I thank you all for your attention and the opportunity to try and help you. And thank you for listening. And here's a big hug. Bye, everybody.
Bye, Dr. Siebecker. Thank you. I was just asking about kids and SIBO, and she does often recommend Dr. Megan Taylor, who is wonderful and a student of Dr. Siebecker's, and she is practicing out of Seattle, Washington right now. So, and she's on our speaker list as well. Okay. Thank you. It has been 2 hours of pure bliss. We appreciate you. We did our best to answer as many questions as possible. I know we got to over 100. If you want that speaker list, you can go to our website, SIBOSOS.com, but also you can email Clarissa, who's our customer service goddess, info@SIBOSOS.com. If you've received an email from us lately, and I know you have, on the bottom of it, look for a pink link. Antoinette, you did the elemental diet and made your SIBO worse. That's a bummer. Did you test before? Did you test after? Was it symptoms that were worse? I'm not a doctor, but I'm just as a friend asking that because those are the questions who were running through my head about that. Let's see. Oh, good. Maria, you have an appointment with Dr. Taylor. Yes. Well, they've worked together extensively. Awesome. She's wonderful. So many of these people are so devoted to the cause. And, obviously we vet the people on our speaker list. You tested after, Antoinette. Okay. I was just wondering how long you did it for. Sometimes that's a good tip, and then I'll wrap up. But often they prescribe the elemental diet for 14 days. If you are working with a lab to get the retest, tell that lab that you're doing the elemental diet, because you need to know within 24 hours if you're going to continue on it for maybe 3 or 4 more days. And for example, Aerodiagnostics Labs out of Boston with the incredible Gary Stapleton, who runs that family-owned lab, if you tell them that you're doing the elemental diet and you need a quick turnaround, they will fast track your test so that you can find out if you need to stay on the elemental diet for longer. Okay. Oh my gosh. Hypoglycemia and the elemental diet. Huge problem for you, Kimmy. Okay. You added a bit of oil with each dose, but it wasn't enough to help with the sugar issues. What kind did you do? Did you do the dextrose-free Physicians Elemental, Kimmy? Also, I had this question with Dr. Ruscio, Michael Ruscio, who created the Elemental Heal formula, which if you go to our website, SIBOSOS.com, in the shop section, you can get the lowest price in the market. We have a lot of exclusive coupons for Atrantil, Elemental Heal. I think everything that we have in the SIBOSOS shop, I have negotiated the lowest price in the marketplace for. He said, be sure to sip it, because his tastes so good. I did gulp it. And while I was doing a webinar with him, I was like, having a hypoglycemia reaction. And he goes, Shivan, sip it, girl. You have to sip it. So I hope that helps. I know it's not simple sometimes. Okay. Suleiman was asking about the mouth effects of SIBO, and I wrote to her, or him, I'm not sure. Suleiman, beautiful name. Does SIBO have oral microbiome impact? So I don't think it's been studied. I think there's a lot of discussion about it. I know that, think about it, the microbiome, because I just did the microbiome summit, right? The microbiome is all over. We have skin microbiome, eye microbiome, obviously all over. In the gut, top of the gut is the mouth. So I do personally think, from my experience, that when there's an overgrowth of certain bacteria, SIBO, test positive or not, that it does impact the top of the tube. It just makes sense, doesn't it? Also, there is a doctor who I want to tell you about. His name, I just saw his, let me look in my thing for a second. There is a New York City microbiome specialist in oral health. I'm looking for that person's name. We'll type in New York City and a biological dentist, microbiome, his name will probably come up, and then you could look at his research because I definitely think it's a fascinating field. And I know you're a dental hygienist, and I'm really glad you're doing that work with that awareness. Thank you. Kimmy, you did the integrative and you did dextrose free and you sipped it. I wonder how much oil you added. Okay. Tara, did you, I don't know if your questions have been coming through. Do you have any classes or additional specialists that have information combining treatments for IMO and IBD? Yeah, I do. Go to SIBOSOS.com, look at Dr. Gary Weiner. His masterclass touches on that. Well, he talks about the overlap there. So that's a resource for you. Okay. All righty. Anything else? Great price. Yes, you're with your daughter right now. I'm glad you want the course because I know how helpful it is. Will I be able to take the course after the fact, or at least tune in, whatever? Yes, yes. Get the course. Watch it when you can, work on it. And then when we do future, like for example, the people who have been students of the course in the past have been invited to every live Q&A for new students. We had so many people last time that we have added an additional one just for them for the upcoming. And some, you probably, if you're an old student, you don't even know that yet because we haven't sent that email out. So yes, you will have future, like we don't, have it like every month. It's periodically, maybe a couple of times a year, you would have access to future Q&A when we do these semester launches. You'll be able to take the course after the fact. This is a go at your own pace, okay? There's one more thing. In the course, you do have some master classes from Dr. Siebecker, and normally those are $59 each, and they are phenomenal on the SIBO diet with 5 hours of Q&A for you to scour through, and those transcripts are searchable. On I think it's on underlying causes. There are a couple of Dr. Siebecker's master classes that are in there, which are like basically worth the value of the price alone. So those are something to dig into as well. We hardly ever talk about them, and we really need to. So, okay, you guys are inquisitive and we love it. If the code isn't working for you, we do have people saying the code isn't working, and then they're saying that it is working. So keep at it. Info at SIBO SOS. Jerry Curatola. Thank you, Ranchna. It's Jerry Curatola, who is that dentist in New York City. Curatola. Thank you. You're brilliant, Ranchna. I appreciate that. That is that biological dentist who's very famous and who talks about the microbiome of the mouth. He's not the only one, thank God, but he's very, very interesting. And yes, you can definitely go at your own pace. Gosh, we all need to be going at our own pace right now, right? Whew. If for some reason the code isn't working for you, then Clarissa can walk you through. Rebecca saying that the code did work for her. Okay. 2 hours and 10 minutes. I think it's time to wrap. Kimmy, go to the Facebook group and talk about the elemental diet experience that you had and see if anybody has any tips, because there are other people who have gone through what you've gone through, and that Facebook group is incredibly helpful and super smart. Let's see. All right, you guys, thank you so much. Thank you very, very much. We love you. We appreciate you. And we're glad you're here today. Okay, take care. Take good care. I'll talk to you later. I'm going to wrap it. Bye. You know what I'm going to do? Am I doing that? Yes. Yes. Okay. You guys got it covered. And if you have any questions, go to info@sibosos.com. Peace.